The year is 2014. Gangnam Style has reached 2 billion views on YouTube, Scotland voted to stay part of the Union, Russia invades Crimea, Suarez bites yet another person in the World Cup, Game of Thrones returns to our screens after the shocking Reigns of Castamere episode, and I auditioned for a role in Telltale Games' venture into George R.R. Martin's wildly popular world of Westeros. Although, originally, no, it's not for Asher Forrester. One of the things that Telltale's Game of Thrones did exceptionally well was to have the actual actors from the show play their respective parts in the video game. The extra level of immersion this provided would help to make players feel as though they had truly entered the world of Westeros, and it also provided us with this wonderful moment. But before it was confirmed that the actors from the show would be stepping into the game to play their roles, Telltale were looking for the closest thing that they could find via voice actors. Enter a young and fresh-faced Alex Jordan, me. Newly graduated from Rosebruford Drama School after 3 years of classical training and recently offered a role at the National Theatre in a play called 3 Winters. I was discovered on YouTube as an impressionist in 2009 when I was just 19 and signed to one of the UK's top voice agents just before heading off to train at drama school. Since graduating, I had begun my voice acting career and had even just been the voice of Sony Xperia's Z3 series. But this was my first video game audition. And the role? Tyrion Lannister. I spent hours devoting myself to the pursuit of perfecting the intonations of Peter Dinklage down to the way that he said Lady Sansa. The company that Telltale were using to cast and record for the game, a studio in London by the name of OMUK, were impressed by my audition when I went in the booth. But alas, it wasn't to be. I lost out on the part to someone who was slightly more qualified for the role. Peter Dinklage. But my time in the booth had at least impressed the good people at OMUK, and I was invited back a few days later to audition for the playable character of Asher Forrester. The casting brief read, "He's an individualist, never one to conform to the prevailing wisdom or hew to a particular mindset out of a sense of duty, honor, or allegiance." I prepared for the character. I felt confident that I knew who he was, and I believed that I was the right person for the role. And then something happened. A call with my then girlfriend, now wife, just before going into the booth for my audition. Our dear friend, my wife's best friend, had been in an accident. She'd been knocked off her bike on the infamous Old Kent Road in South London by someone opening their door into traffic. She was thrown from her bike into the path of a rubbish truck. We didn't know what condition she was in. All I knew was that there was nothing I could do in this moment except focus on the audition. I walked into the booth full of these emotions of fear and sadness, and I had to project the character of a young man who was brash, bold, confident, and adventure-seeking. And the audition itself was a bit of a blur. Honestly, I took a deep breath. I think I just disassociated from the outside world, which is, that's healthy, and I focused on throwing myself into the character. The responses in the studio were positive, I remember that at least. And then I finished the audition. I made my excuses, I left, and I found a pub nearby because my phone was dying. I was running out of battery, and this pub allowed me to charge my phone if I bought a beer there. I sat in the corner, and I cried. Now, the good news is that years later, that friend of ours would walk up the aisle ahead of my wife as her maid of honor on our wedding day, and my wife would do the same for her. Working with Telltale was a dream come true. The style of gameplay is an actor's dream. It's heavily dialogue-based, it's got a clear narrative to follow, there are character arcs and beats, and I fell in love with playing Asher Forrester. To this day, he's still one of my favorite characters that I have ever played. From a brash young man with all the exaggerated swagger of a confident sellsword to a dutiful and vengeful son, brother, and lord, but passionate the whole way through. The time spent in the booth was an absolute joy, and in the evenings, I showed the directors who were over from San Francisco the sights and beers of London, and it was a wonderful time in my life. It was deeply saddening when I learned that Telltale was closing down. I was sad for the friends I'd made who would be losing their jobs, and I was sad that we would never have the opportunity to tell the rest of Asher's story. But I like to imagine that it would have been a tale of hard-fought victories and vengeance. And the spirit of Asher lives on when people who join my Twitch chat realize that I voiced him and they tell me how much they loved him as a character. And the terrible accident, with my friend aside, I'm truly grateful for all of these experiences. And in the words of House Forrester, iron from ice,